Think of when a brand reaches the point where you get that exclusive devotion, right? When you actually feel like you're cheating on that brand when you use other brands, or you even think about using other brands, or you touch one of those other brands, you feel icky. It's like, where's that even come from? What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Office Hour Tangents, a podcast where I typically come straight from class and I talk about the tangents that I may have went on in class. Okay, usually I'm talking about a subject matter, and then I veer off on a tangent, and sometimes that tangent is a little more interesting than what I'm teaching in class. The tangent I'm gonna talk about today didn't really start in tonight's class. Just a little thought on the class I'm teaching now. I'm teaching Interactive Design 2, which is part of a 3-course sequence, and this middle one is more of a technology-driven class, which leads to a lot of anxiety and stress in the students. So there's some tangents going on, but it's more so some technological stuff. So actually this tangent started at the coffee shop, and just because of some recent current events, right? The current event being the election. So I'm not going to talk about the election at all, but the conversation, it was somebody kind of just talking to me, and I was just listening because I generally have not followed politics in the last 4 years because it was just a source of stress. So I just kind of cut it all out. But I was kind of engaging this person, and then, I steered the conversation to, away from the politics of it into the branding of it, right? So I started getting a conversation with this person about brands and how different groups brand themselves. Like when you get into like groups like Democrats, Republicans, and other kind of groups around there, and how they purposely and intentionally use imagery, use verbiage, use travel, everything to kind of contribute to the brand that they're trying to push. Then I had to remind him that what a brand actually is, which is not what you think about yourself, is what they think about you, right? So I can go all day saying that I'm a cool dude, I'm a smart guy, I'm a people person. I can say all this stuff about me. That's what I believe about myself. I believe that is my identity. But my brand is what others think about me. Like, that's what persists. So that's where the conversation kind of went down the path of. So today I'm going to talk about branding, but specifically cult brands. Okay? And cult, C-U-L-T, brands. And that's where the conversation kind of went towards. And it was an interesting conversation. So when I talk about cult brands, I kind of got into branding when I was getting my MFA, and my thesis, the thesis research that I was working on dealt with personal brands, but it kind of took me around this road where I got into like what makes a cult brand, basically what makes a brand become like indispensable to people. Right. And I started studying and researching cult brands, and I found it very interesting. So from the jump, I want to just emphasize that there's like different ways you can define cults. Right. So, and I'm going to read this because, I don't have to memorize anything. But, this cult branding, it is type in Google cult branding. It is a thing. It is a subject matter that can be researched, that can be studied. There's books. I have a few books that I will point out if you just can't read them now. But, you can take a deep dive into cult branding. I am not going to do this today in this podcast, but I just it is something that people study and research, and it is something that, a lot of brands strive to be. You kind of that's like the pinnacle of like making it as a brand, in my opinion, is like to become a cult-like brand. And because of these definitions. So I am not talking about cults in the sense of, I'm going to read this definition, okay? So a group or movement exhibiting a great or excessive devotion or dedication to some person, idea, or thing, and employing unethical, manipulative techniques or persuasion and control designed to advance the goals of the group's leaders to the actual possible detriment of members, their families, or the community. I am not talking about those kind of cults, right? I'm not talking about the cults that go somewhere and drink something and think they're going to heaven or think they're going to space. And I'm not talking about really religious cults. I mean, not like religious-based cults. That's where usually people go when they hear the word cult. They think about religious-based cults. I'm not really talking about that. I am talking about these kind of cults now, and I wanted to, based on that definition I just read, the emphasis on great or excessive devotion, right? We see that actually in this conversation at the coffee shop. That's what it kind of started devolving into was this excessive and great devotion, like the word devotion, unethical, manipulative techniques to try to get this devotion, and designed to advance the goals of the group's leaders. Okay, not necessarily talking about those kind of cults, right? I'm talking about more so. This is a better definition of what I'm talking about when I say cult brands. A brand for which a group of customers exhibit a great devotion or dedication. Its ideology is distinctive and it has a well-defined and committed community. It enjoys exclusive devotion that is not shared with other brands in the same category, and its members often become voluntary advocates. I want to emphasize the exclusive devotion, meaning that when I get into it, meaning that, for instance, iPhone users will not touch Androids. I talked about that in a separate podcast. Look it up. But that exclusive devotion to a brand and the voluntary advocates that brand manufactures. So this iPhone user that has exclusive devotion is also a brand advocate. It's trying to convert Android users to iPhone users without Apple paying them anything. Actually, they're paying Apple, and they're actually side. I messed that word up. I might edit that out. But they're actually, becoming salespeople for Apple, right? That's what I'm talking about. So that's where the direction I'm going in mostly for this tangent. So not all cults are bad, right? When you hear the word cult, people think bad. People think evil. People think like that first definition I read. Not all cults are bad, right? Because this devotion, this voluntary advocate, that can also describe religions. Not all religions, but a lot of religions, right? A lot of religions, some people might have cult-like movements, right? But they have a community. They are totally devoted to that church. To that religion, so on and so forth. Churches can be considered in that category, right? You kind of follow them. You have a community. You stick with this church base. Some people for all their lives, they advocate for this church, so on and so forth. I would say countries. You can have devotion towards countries. Political parties. So kind of mentioned that earlier. And it's kind of cringeworthy when, if you really think about it, for real, you could belong to a political party, but you can actually have this kind of unhealthy devotion to political parties too, right? And cultures. So cultures can have cult-like tendencies. For instance, I'm a hip hop head. Some people can say that I belong to the cult of hip hop because I kind of see the world through a hip hop lens, and we consider hip hop a culture. It's not what we do, it's how we live type of thing. KRS-One has a whole kind of educational system built around the culture of hip hop. He calls it the temple of hip hop. Look it up. It's kind of dope. But, all these things can kind of fit those definitions of a cult brand, right? So not all cults are brands, and I'm not talking about the bad cults. So When we talk about cult branding, though, it's kind of like, think of when a brand reaches the point where you get that exclusive devotion, right? When you actually feel like you're cheating on that brand when you use other brands, or you even think about using other brands, or you touch one of those other brands, you feel icky. It's like, where's that even come from? Because us as human beings, in my opinion, like, I don't want to say this is based in science or research, and this is just my thoughts. Us as human beings, we're very tribal. We like to belong to things. And when we find a product or a brand that fits our sensibilities or places us in a situation that benefits us or we feel comfortable in, we tend to cling to that. Sometimes too much. But oftentimes we show a lot of loyalty because that becomes, we're a part of that tribe. Okay? So let's talk about some examples. So let's start with the iPhone. I've already talked about the iPhone versus Android thing in another podcast. But from a cult brand perspective, so if you look up cult brands on Google, a lot of times they're going to have Apple on there almost all the time. Apple. So I'm not saying Apple. I think Apple was considered a cult brand, in my opinion, a little further back in the day, right? I think a little overlap. The iPhone came out 2007, so I would think up to that point and kind of getting past that. But I think as the iPhone just proliferated and just kind of like took over, I think it's more like the cult of iPhone. I think most people that can think they're Apple people, they're not Apple people, they're iPhone people. They don't own any other Apple products. They just have iPhones, or their introduction to Apple was the iPhone. Whereas back in the day, I think the cult of Apple was more so creatives that use Mac products to create things, right? And it was an exclusive club because the Macs were a little more expensive. They weren't as ubiquitous as Windows. You couldn't download everything, but it was just for a niche kind of group. But since then, Apple products have kind of like morphed into like a consumer product for the lay person, in my opinion, not for the niche kind of group of people, and they kind of make products for everybody. But the iPhone is where people they start exhibiting these cult-like tendencies right now, right? And when you meet an iPhone person and you have an Android, they're going to try to make you feel bad. Like, I'm not saying everybody. I'm talking about the ones that exhibit cult-like tendencies. They're going to talk about the blue bubble. They're going to talk about how it feels, how it just works, and then a part of that community, a lot of cult-like brands, they have a community following, right? So iPhones do a great job with this, where you can do certain things with iPhones with other iPhone users that everybody else can't, right? You can AirPlay. You can share your contacts by button them or something like that. You have all these like little, and you got the blue bubble. You got all these things that only the community of iPhone, not necessarily the community of Apple, but the community of iPhone, this cult of iPhone, they have. And they just do a great job with it. You become a brand advocate. So these iPhone users become brand advocates for Apple and iPhone. Like they're talking to you why you should buy an iPhone. Apple's not paying them, right? They're not a salesperson for Apple, but they're advocates for Apple. And if you have a business, once you get it to the point where people are advocating for you without you giving them any kickback, without you, any reward systems or referral, bonuses, they're just like, I love the brand and you should love the brand. And let me tell you why you should love this brand, because I love it, right? That's like cult-like tendencies, right? Another one, Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson does a really good job of selling a story, right? If you go into a Harley Davidson store or even see it off the highway, I won't say they're always off the highway, but oftentimes I see them off of highways. And I think that's purposeful to show that, like, the open road. If you go to their website or you go to any of their kind of marketing materials, it's always they're promoting the open road. and they have their stores on a highway. Like, wouldn't you driving by in a car, like, man, would I wish to get a Harley and be on this road with a Harley, right? For these Harley people. And, when you meet a Harley person, they'll, not all, but the people that are kind of like the cult of Harley, they'll bad talk other, Suzuki's, Yamaha people. They'll bad talk the Ninja people and all these. They'll call them crotch rockets and it goes too fast and blah 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 and the technology, and they really advocate for their brand. And I think, and it's a story behind it. Most great brands and even cult brands, they have a story that they sell, not necessarily a product or service. It's a story that people fall into and start believing, right? And that sounds familiar, right? When we're talking about other kinds of cults, it's a story that people fall into and start believing. And then after a while, you just kind of blindly believe it and nobody else can tell you anything else, right? It's really hard for a product to get to that level. And there are a few products that have gotten to that level though. Another one, Nike, right? Won't spend too much time on Nike, but you have Nike people. You have people that won't buy any other sneaker but Nike. You just have those people. They feel like they're cheating on Nike if they have to wear another type of shoe. I would say that Nike is, I won't say it's seen its best days as a cult brand, but I just think, and it kind of goes into, so speaking of a tangent, my last podcast, I talked about how the Jordan 1s and the people that wear the SB Dunks is just kind of getting towards corny status, because it used to be an exclusive thing, and that was the cult of it. It was like an exclusive thing. Like if you had Jordan 1s on, it's kind of like you looked at that person like, man, they must have went through something to get those Jordan 1s. They had to go through a secondhand reseller. They probably paid triple the price. They only wear it for special occasions. It was something. And it's like you had Jordan 1s. It was like a something thing. But now, it's not that hard to find Jordan 1s. Like everybody has Jordan 1s. Like at least where I'm at, like everybody has them. Like a soccer mom's, like everybody. And once it kind of gets to that point, it's hard to maintain its cult-like following because everybody has it. A cult is not about everybody belonging to this cult. A cult usually forms when it's a very niche group of people that believe in something blindly a lot of times, and they try to recruit people into their cult by talking about the benefits of that story, right? And I think Nike used to be there. But I still think, you have brand advocates for Nike. But I think they kind of made some decisions just recently that it's hurting that status. It's hurting that status, and it's letting certain other brands kind of creep in, and hopefully, I think they're too big to, go away or not be the number one shoe reseller in the world. But that's what I said about Blockbuster at one time. So let's leave it at that. Vans. So on the other side of the spectrum in the shoe category, Vans. Vans has a following and a group of people that exhibit certain kind of cult-like tendencies, right? Because Vans shoes are like the counterculture. They're like the anti-Nike, right? Vans people, they don't keep their Vans clean. Like clean Vans almost look corny. So I'm not going to put his name out there, but one of my boys, and I'm looking, and you know who I'm talking about, had some Vans, right? One time, and I saw him with some Vans when we was in Vegas, and he pulled out the Vans, and I'm like, you got some Vans on, bro? Like, because I know this dude ain't never jumped on a skateboard. He's not a part of that kind of culture. He was wearing them because this is what I thought. Like, I was just cracking on him because that's what we do, but they were trendy. It was like trendy to wear these shoes that aren't basketball shoes. Because we grew up in a time where we wore basketball shoes. We wore Jordans because of Jordan. We wore Barclays because of Charles Barkley. David Robinson had shoes. We wore shoes because of that. But like Vans, nobody was wearing Vans in our school, right? But we knew where they were wearing Vans at. So he was wearing Vans, and I thought it was a trendy thing to do, not necessarily like, hey, I want to kind of, be a part of this culture. But, Vans kind of represents that cult-like following, like, and it's kind of like I think Vans is one of those cults where it is no brand advocates. It's not. I don't see a lot of people advocating for the brand. It's kind of like enclosed. Like, I'm part of the counter skateboard surf culture, and y'all are not. And let's keep it like that. It's like you're born into it. Like, you're either the Van person or you're not. It's not like, hey, Vans are so comfortable, you should wear them too. So it's different kinds of like this cult like following. Chick-fil-A. I talked about Chick-fil-A before, but in the sense of the brand advocates of Chick-fil-A, like, people will talk about how Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches are just superior to any other chicken sandwich. And I don't believe that. And I usually get jumped on for that. I just usually see Chick-fil-A as expensive chicken with long lines in the drive-thru, and it's not worth it. And they're like, but it's like the immediacy of the defense is striking when it comes to Chick-fil-A, because it's like you can't even get the sentence out and the lines are long, but the lines go fast. You know, they got 2 lines, and there's somebody out there, and they're so polite, and you know the batter is just so good, and their sauce, oh my god, and you know, and they're closed on Sundays, so they have values. Like, all that stuff contributes to the cult of Chick-fil-A. And if you think about it, it's a chicken sandwich. It's chicken on bread, really, and they have this sauce. I bought that sauce. It's in my refrigerator now. I bought some chicken, and I bought like some potato bread, and I make sandwiches for my son. You know, that's kind of like Chick-fil-A, because I'm not paying all that money for chicken. But they can charge that money because they build up this cult-like following. So we have this tangent. We have this corner, and I see this a lot. We have this corner where there's a Chick-fil-A, and then a Raising Cane's just built a restaurant right next to it. So they're just right next to each other, almost like a McDonald's and a Wendy's being right next to each other. So they're right next to each other. And me and my son, when we pass it, we always see who's winning, like who has the most cars in the driveway, right? And it's always Chick-fil-A. It's always Chick-fil-A. It's like people will drive. It'll be nobody in the Raising Cane's drive-through sometime, but people will pass it, and they will get into this 20-car line for Chick-fil-A. You know what I'm saying? And I'm convinced it's not the quality. It's the feeling. It's the story that's making most of those people pass all these other restaurants and go to the Chick-fil-A line. It's what they sell. They're very good at it. I have on here health food stores. So when you see a lot of cult brand lists, you'll see Trader Joe's. And I think, yeah, Trader Joe's does have a following, but I think it's just like the health food stores. I think it's the vitamin stores, the health food stores, the Sprouts, the Whole Foods, the Trader Joe's, the Raisin Racks, things like that. And it's the people that follow these stores. I don't necessarily think these stores are really actively trying to get this cult-like brand. I think Trader Joe's does that a little more than others, and Whole Foods, no doubt. But I think it's the people, it's the health. It's almost like the cult of, I don't want to call it the cult of healthy people, because a lot of these people aren't healthy. But they think, since they're shopping at quote-unquote health food stores exclusively, that they're eating better food. Which may or may not be true, because, a lot of these people aren't reading labels. They're just thinking that since it came from Trader Joe's, it's healthier than if it came from Publix. And they'll think it's better because, for instance, this package of chicken is $15 over here at Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or Sprouts, and a bag of chicken at Target is $6. They think that because it's more expensive, it's better. Or because it has a label of organic, it's better. Right? Same thing with Chick-fil-A. Like, there's mad, like, YouTube videos, things, articles you can read about, the chemicals in Chick-fil-A sandwiches. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I just read, right? I want to know what's going on in my body or in my son's body, because he loves Chick-fil-A. And I found out, it's a lot of stuff in Chick-fil-A meat. Right? But as soon as I say that, it's like, nuh-uh, but it still tastes good. I don't care what's in it. Like, that's blind devotion. Like, when you hear that, you got to recognize what that is. And when I hear that kind of stuff, what I do is I research. I'm like, why this blind devotion? Like, what can I use when I'm helping a company with their branding? What can I use to help them try to get to this blind devotion, this blind following where they could become a cult like brand, right? So I just think it's the call of the healthy people. Like, they'll say, hey, you must, you got to look, you got to watch the labels. You got to watch what you put in your bodies. Watch out for GMOs. Watch out for this. Watch out for that. Make sure it's grass fed. Make sure it's this. And, the good spot is over here, this little nick in the spot. And then you could spend $80 at the spot and only have like 5 items in your cart. Whereas you spend $80 at Walmart and you have a lot of other stuff in your cart. But this 4 items makes the people buying it feel better. And it could be a placebo effect where it's just like making you feel better. So you actually feel better, and maybe your body manifests to feel better based on this thought process. Right. So I think it's a benevolent cult, but I think it's like these healthy people that kind of push health on people. It kind of gets cultish. Right? And it kind of starts with these health food stores. I have Tesla on here, but I don't think Tesla, as I kind of think about it, I don't think Tesla is a cult-like brand yet. I don't know if it'll ever get there. I think it'll have I think Elon Musk is a cult-like figure. I think people follow Elon Musk in a cult-like manner, but I don't think Tesla as a brand is that. And I just think because it has a lot of irons in the fire. Like most of these brands I'm talking about, it's like one service, one product that they specialize in. It's shoes, it's chicken sandwiches, it's motorcycles, things like that. Tesla has a lot of stuff going on, right? And it's hard to kind of get that devoted following towards a product when there's so many products and so many different products. They're going to space, they have cars. They have social networks. It's just a lot going on. And it's like, is the social network owned by Tesla or is it owned by Elon Musk? It's hard to separate the two. And usually with these like high level brands that people blindly follow, it's like one thing they focus on, not 100 things. So I have on here CrossFit. It's kind of like CrossFit, I think, has a cult-like following. I think it's died down a little bit from what I've just kind of seen, but I think it's more so of like it's kind of a piggyback of the health food and the healthy people cult. It's just like this cult of being active and being super active. Like CrossFit promotes super activity. It promotes, you just don't do pull-ups. You do pull-ups and then you push up. And then you grab, and then you flip, and you land, and then you do a squat, and then you do a lunge, and then you flip over a tire, and then you do a backflip, and then you see how long that took. Right? And it's just like, that's how you're supposed to work out, and that's how you're supposed to do it. And I'm saying it's dope. I don't subscribe to all of that, but the people that do, they do. It's almost like people that love the UFC or the people that love WWE wrestling. It's like this. I don't care. I know it's crazy, but that's me. I'm crazy. Like I gotta do the super pull-up. I can't do regular pull-ups. I can't just lift regular weights. I gotta do a circuit. I gotta do a parkour, through the park, and you gotta see my muscles type of thing. Like CrossFit found that niche and they catered to that niche. And that's what cult brands do very well. They find a niche, not even find the niche, they recognize the niche, and then they cater to the niche. A lot of companies, when they form, they try to cater to everybody. And I don't want to use the word cater. They just try to be everything to everybody. And it's almost impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible. Amazon does that. But that's Amazon, right? But you can't please everybody. And like when companies come to me about branding, about anything else, and I'll say, hey, who you trying to sell this to? Everybody. It's like, 9 times out of 10, that's what they say. Everybody. Yeah, I get it. You don't want to stop any money from coming in. I'm not saying that. I'm saying Apple, for instance, they cater towards a very specific group, right? And I would call them the cool slackers. People that have excess money where they can buy excess things, because Apple is considered a luxury brand to me. Like anything you can get at Apple, you can get elsewhere. They don't sell anything really unique. You can get a computer from somewhere else. You can get a smartphone somewhere else. You can get a virtual reality thing somewhere else. You can get a tablet from somewhere else. They don't sell anything that's exclusive to Apple, but they come across like their products are more luxurious. They have more luxury pricing, right? And they cater to the people. They cater to this. I would say I always call it the slacker with excess money. Like that's all the way I can describe it. It's kind of like that. And I've talked about this in another another episode. But the Apple versus Mac. I mean, the Apple versus Windows person. You know, the Windows person is stuffy and all stuff up in the Apple person is like a slacker. He just has jeans on, looks like he works from home, and this is like 20 years ago. And he looks like he just has money. However he got it. Whether he's just has a kind of job where he can like pay for bills and everything. He has an extra $2,000 to buy a computer. You know, where most people, you know, they need a computer, but they don't have $2,000 to buy it. But Apple's not catering towards them. They're catering towards the people that can afford a $2,000 computer and a $1,500 phone and a $700 tablet and $99 a year for Apple Care. Like that's who they cater to. Now, that's not to say that everybody does not want Apple products. They do. But they think when they get them, they'll be a part of that group. They'll be a part of that group. They're able to put that Apple sticker on their car, right? And they become part of the tribe. Same thing with Nike, like, you know, but going back to the whole the Jordan 1s, it's like, I think that's why people eventually started, you know, Jordan 1's been out since the 80s, right? They came out and then you couldn't get them no more because Jordan 2, Jordan 3. So when you got to the retro thing, it was hard to get Jordan 1s. And it was like, if you went through the process of getting Jordan 1s, just like, oh, I'm part of the tribe now. I could be with the cool kids. But once the soccer mom was able to get them, it's not exclusive anymore, right? It's not part of that niche. Nike, you never see a Nike commercial where they have a soccer mom or anybody that fits that archetype in their commercial. You've never seen Nike commercials like, we make products for everybody. Nike doesn't make products for everybody. Nike makes products for elite athletes. That's who you see in commercials, mostly. I remember that commercial with the kid that was out of shape and it was running. You know, it was real powerful. But it was powerful because you never see anything like that from Nike. You see the highly elite, in shape, ready to go athletes doing athletic things in their products. And never do you see soccer moms or just people that just work in an office space all day and never jog. But these people have Jordan 1s on now, and they have Jordan 1s on and SB Dunks because they want to be a part of that elite athlete tribe, right? They just want to kind of appear like that from the outside. Like, I'm a part of that tribe. I know about Jordan 1s. You want to strike up a conversation about how I got these Jordan 1s on StockX? And I had to bid and outbid this dude, and these things cost $500. But they're exclusive. There's only 2 of them in the United States. Now you're part of that tribe. But when it gets too many out there, and that's what Nike, and I didn't read all the article stuff, but it feels like they just put too many out there, and I think they had some kind of, now I'm on this tangent, my bad, but they had a strategy that backfired on them. So it's like, it's not really cool anymore. It's just like, it is what it is. And it's still selling, but it's just like, it's not exclusive. I think they're losing that cult-like thing when it comes to these retro shoes. And, if you want to become a cult brand, you have to cater to your niche almost exclusively. And the others will come. Because if that niche is a desirable niche, then people will come. Or it might be like Vans where they don't even care. Like, they don't even want you part of their niche. Like, we got our niche. We got our surfers and our skateboarders. And we think and we do things a little differently. And it's cool. You don't even have to come over here. Right? But you have others like, yeah, we want all that money like Apple. But we only still catering to the slacker with excess money, right? So yeah, and then it just go back to the original way this tangent got started in the coffee shop, and I just was talking about how, it was politics. Like I said, I don't want to talk about politics, but you know, when you get into people, when you get into when you get into like, okay, Republicans, Democrats, that's like colors, right? It's colors. It's Bloods and Crips. It's Bloods and Crips. But it's like you follow this color. You follow these political stances and these beliefs. Okay, cool. But once you start following a person, right? Once people start having this blind devotion to a person, this person can be way more powerful than any product or brand, because people have stories, inherently have stories, and people can form stories just by looking at the person, right? They can tell stories. When you're talking about cults, when a cult is around a person, when it comes to certain churches, that could be a good thing. But we also know that could be a very damaging thing too. Because when you have this blind devotion and this brand advocacy for a single human being, right? Then it's something else. And then, the conversation went into that. But cult brands are where you should strive to be if you have a business or brand. It's just where you should. Like, you should want to have a cult brand. And you might be saying, nah, I'm just cool. And that's not saying it's bad. It's just that you want people to say, hey, that product, you need to try that product. That product is dope. Like, you need to try it. Like, I have a coffee shop I go to, Deeks and Del Rey. I said Deeks and Del Rey, they have great coffee. It's the best coffee I've ever tasted. And I'm not a coffee connoisseur like that, but I haven't tasted anything better yet. And I advocate for that brand. I tell people about it. I'm like, man, y'all should go check it out. Yeah, it's great coffee. I bring samples to people. I bring people in for meetings. And I'm cool with that because I feel like a part of that tribe. I feel like, whether I'm part of that tribe or not, but I feel like I'm part of that tribe and I'm telling other people about this tribe. It's a product, right? And they have people in there that are part of that product, right? And it changes when you have people involved. And so that's just how the conversation came about and when talking about cult brands. So before I dip out of here, I did want to, so if you're still anybody interested in this subject matter, like these books right here, really helped me out when I was kind of researching this topic. How Brands Become Icons. This is a good book. It's just a different way to look at branding from, outside of just like the visual, the designy nature of brands and brand marks and logos. This one, The Culting of Brands, is a good one, right? But this is like, I just want to show this. This is something that is studied. It's not something that I made up. The Power of Cult Branding. I actually attended a conference or something back in the day and met one of these authors, BJ Bueno. Cool dude. And I like this book because it just follows certain brands, and for every chapter it kind of talks about these same brands but from a different direction. So they're like Star Trek, Oprah Winfrey, WWE, Harley Davidson, Volkswagen, Jimmy Buffett, Linux. Then they kind of talk about it different directions for each of those brands. It's a cool book. And then this book right here, The Cult of We. Now this doesn't talk about it. It's not a cult branding book, but this is about like the rise and fall of WeWork, right? And how that became like a cult-like following just kind of amongst the employees. So that's another way you can kind of get this cult-like following. If you have employees or you have people you work with, and if they start following that story of that company, not necessarily the person, that's what that book gets into. People started following the person instead of the service being delivered. And that could be powerful too. That can make people work harder for your brand and make sure the consumers or whoever you're marketing to are super satisfied. So yeah, it's a subject matter that it just interests me beyond all ends because it talks about human behavior, and whenever you can find that group, that niche group, and start to know how they tick, and then you can offer them something that they're gonna want to follow or gonna want to use or gonna want to buy, and then they're gonna want to tell other people to do it too, right? And that's when you reach this kind of cult brand level. And yeah, that's it's an interesting thing. But I do think as far as politics go, you see a lot of that, and people don't really talk about it in that sense. You talk about policies, you talk about this and that, but all I see a lot of times is blind devotion towards a color. It's like blind devotion towards a color, whether it's just take what just blind devotion towards a color. That's how I see politics go, and it keeps me sane when you go through this whole political process. It's just like, you're not gonna convince certain people. Like certain people you can, but most of them you can't, because it's a blind devotion. It's a cult brand. All right, so that's it for this Office Hour Tangents. Remind to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Go into the comments, and tell me if any other topics you would like to see covered, or any other brands that I didn't cover that you think that have like a cult like status. I would love to hear about some other brands that people just blindly follow. That'd be dope to kind of get a list of those going. But until next time, peace.